Jiwon Park stood at his post in the human quarter of Harmony 7, watching the morning shift change through the transparent walls of the station. Ships came and went like insects around a hive, carrying cargo and passengers from 100 different worlds. He had been working station security for 8 months now, ever since humanity joined the Galactic Coalition. It was supposed to be an honor. Most days, it felt like babysitting. His partner, Nari Kim, sat at the security console behind him, her fingers dancing across the holographic display. She was better with computers than anyone else in their unit. The aliens had designed these systems to be impossible to hack, or so they claimed. Nari had proven them wrong 3 times already, though she kept that information to herself. "Another quiet day," Jiwon said, stretching his arms above his head. "Maybe we'll actually get through a shift without—" Every speaker in the station exploded with sound. The announcement system was designed to broadcast emergency alerts across all 47 levels of Harmony 7. It could reach every corridor, every room, every ship docked at the station. Right now, it was doing exactly that. But this was no emergency alert. "Bring her back." The voice was small and frightened. A child's voice. "Please. Bring Hannah back. Please, someone bring her back." Jiwon froze. Nari's hand stopped moving over her console. The message repeated. Again and again. The same words, the same desperate plea echoing through the entire station. "That's a kid," Nari whispered. "I know." Jiwon was already moving toward the console. "Can you shut it down?" "I'm trying." Her fingers flew across the controls. "It's not responding." Someone locked it out. This is really sophisticated," the voice continued. There was something heartbreaking about it, the way it held back tears but couldn't quite hide the fear. Whoever this child was, they were terrified. "Bring her back. Please bring Hannah back." Alarms began to sound as other security teams responded. Jiwon's communicator buzzed with incoming calls. He ignored them all, leaning over Nari's shoulder to watch her work. "Whoever did this knew what they were doing," Nari said. "They didn't just hack the announcement system. They locked everyone else out. I can't override it from here. How long until they break through?" "Hours, maybe 6 or 7 hours." Jiwon closed his eyes. 6 hours of this message, playing on loop, heard by every person on the station. By the time it stopped, everyone would know these words by heart. "Find out where it's coming from," he said. The voice played on. Station Administrator Velkrim, a tall centauri with purple skin and too many arms, appeared on their screens 20 minutes later. His face showed the irritation that his species was famous for. "This is a security breach," he announced to all teams. "Find the source. Shut it down. Arrest whoever is responsible." Jiwon barely listened. He was watching Nari work, tracking the signal through the station's network. It bounced through relay after relay, deliberately obscured. But Nari was patient. She followed each thread until, finally, she found it. "Level 23, she said. "Human quarter. Maintenance terminal near the hydroponics garden." They ran. The human quarter was small compared to other species areas. Humans were new to the coalition, and new members didn't get much space. But what they lacked in territory, they made up for in noise. Human music played from open doors. The smell of cooking food drifted through the corridors, a mix of cuisines from a dozen different Earth cultures. Jiwon had grown up in Seoul, and sometimes the scent of kimchi from someone's quarters made him homesick. The maintenance terminal was in a quiet corner near the garden where humans grew earth plants, tomatoes, peppers, and flowers that reminded them of home. The terminal screen was still active, lines of code scrolling past faster than Jiwon could read. A small figure sat cross-legged in front of it. A little girl, maybe 6 years old, with dark hair pulled into 2 ponytails. She wore a bright yellow shirt with a cartoon character on it. Her eyes were red from crying, but she stared at the screen with fierce determination. "Hey," Jiwon said softly, kneeling beside her. "What's your name?" The girl looked at him. Her lower lip trembled. "Yuna, I'm Jiwon, this is Nari." He kept his voice gentle. "Yuna, did you do this?" She nodded slowly. That's actually really impressive. He meant it. He had no idea how a 6-year-old had managed to hack Coalition security systems. Can you tell me why? They took my mom, Yuna whispered. They said she left, but she didn't. She wouldn't leave me. I know she wouldn't. Nari crouched down on the other side of the girl. Who's your mom, sweetie? Hannah Choi. She works for the Coalition. She tells them about human things, about our stories and our food and everything. Yuna's voice grew stronger. She's been gone for 3 weeks. They said she quit her job and left the station, but she didn't say goodbye. She didn't take her things. She didn't take me. Ji-won exchanged a glance with Nari. 3 weeks. That was recent enough to trace. Yuna, we're going to help you, he said. But first, we need to turn off the message. Can you show Nari how you did this? The girl studied him for a long moment, as if weighing whether to trust him. Then she turned to Nari and started explaining. Her small fingers pointed at lines of code, describing how she had found a backdoor in the system, how she had used the maintenance credentials. She'd watched a technician enter last week. Nari listened with growing amazement. You memorized a 30-digit access code by watching someone type it once? Yuna shrugged. I'm good at remembering numbers. It took Nari another hour to safely shut down the broadcast. By then, other security teams had arrived, along with Administrator Velcrum himself. He stared down at Yuna with all 4 of his eyes. This child caused 6 hours of disruption, he said. She must be punished according to station law. She's 6 years old, Ji-won said, standing between Velcrum and the girl. And she was asking for help? She broke Coalition security protocols. She's a child looking for her mother. Ji-won kept his voice steady, but inside he was calculating. How far could he push this? How much trouble was he willing to get into? Velcrum's eyes narrowed. The woman Hannah Choi resigned her position 3 weeks ago and left the station. This is documented. There is no mystery here. Then there's no harm in me checking the records, Ji-won said, just to put the child's mind at ease. You are security, not an investigator. I'm security, and a child just hacked our entire station to ask for help. That seems like something worth investigating. They stared at each other for a long moment. Finally, Velcrum waved one hand dismissively. Check your records. You will find nothing. And keep this child under control. He left, his footsteps echoing down the corridor. Ji-won looked down at Yuna, who was watching him with wide, hopeful eyes. Come on, he said, offering his hand. Let's go find your mom. She took his hand, her small fingers gripping tight. Behind them, Nari was already pulling up files on her portable console. Searching for any mention of Hannah Choi, the investigation had begun. The records room was cold and smelled like recycled air. Ji-won sat at a terminal while Yuna perched on a chair beside him, swinging her legs back and forth. Nari stood behind them, her eyes scanning the data as it appeared on screen. Hannah Choi, Ji-won read aloud. Cultural liaison assigned to document human customs and traditions for Coalition archives. Age 29. Originally from Busan, he glanced at Yuna. Is that your mom? The girl nodded, pointing at the photo on screen. A young woman with kind eyes and long dark hair smiled back at them. She looked like someone who laughed easily, someone who would be a good mother. What happened 3 weeks ago? Nari asked, leaning closer. Ji-won scrolled through the timeline. The record showed regular work logs, daily reports, and then suddenly 3 weeks ago everything stopped. In its place was a single document, a resignation letter. I, Hannah Choi, hereby resign from my position as cultural liaison, effective immediately. I have accepted private employment opportunities in the Outer Rim. Thank you for the opportunity to serve the Coalition. The words were formal and cold. They didn't sound like something a mother would write before abandoning her child. See? Yuna said, her voice tight. She didn't write that. My mom doesn't talk like that. Ji-won was inclined to agree, but feelings weren't evidence. He dug deeper into the records. The resignation had been filed by someone named Krelven, a Vrin trade representative. The departure manifest showed Hannah leaving on a merchant vessel called the Drifting Fortune. bound for the Outer Rim territories. Everything looks official, Nari said quietly, but it's not right. Jiwon sat back in his chair. Where was Yuna when all this happened? Who's been taking care of her? Dr. Sorahan, Yuna said. She's my mom's friend. She's a scientist. She studies alien plants. My mom asked her to watch me for a few days while she finished a big project. But then she never came back. Jiwon made a note to talk to Dr. Sorahan. He returned to the records, searching for anything unusual. Travel logs, communication records, security footage. Hours passed. Yuna fell asleep in her chair, her head resting on the console. Nari brought coffee from the human quarter, the real stuff that cost too much but tasted like home. There, Nari said suddenly, pointing at the screen. Look at the timestamp. Jiwon squinted at the numbers. The resignation letter had been filed at 3:47 station time. The departure manifest showed Hana boarding the ship at 4:15, less than 30 minutes between deciding to quit her job and leaving the station forever, without taking her daughter or any personal belongings. That's not normal, Jiwon said. It's not human, Nari corrected. No human parent leaves like that. They kept searching. Jiwon pulled up security footage from the docking bay on the day Hana supposedly left. The video showed the Drifting Fortune, a mid-sized cargo vessel, docked at Bay 17. Several figures moved cargo crates on and off the ship. The footage was grainy and the angles were bad, but Jiwon thought he could see someone who might be Hana. Walking up the boarding ramp, but the person's movements were wrong, stiff, uncertain, not like someone choosing to leave, but like someone being led. I need to talk to the dock supervisor, Jiwon said. The dock supervisor was a Thoraxian named Click-Click-Wur, which was the closest human pronunciation of her actual name. She had 6 legs and compound eyes that made Jiwon uncomfortable when she looked at him. The Drifting Fortune? She said, her translator device rendering her clicks and whistles into flat, emotionless words. Yes, I remember. Vrin vessel. They loaded mining equipment and supplies? Standard cargo run. Did you see any passengers board? I do not monitor passengers. Only cargo manifests. But you saw the ship. You saw people moving around it. Click, 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 Wur's antennae twitched. I saw Vrin crew. They moved crates. Very efficient. Very quick. They departed on schedule. And you didn't see a human woman? Dark hair, about this tall? Jiwon held his hand up to indicate height. Many humans look similar to me, the supervisor said. I cannot distinguish individuals of your species easily. It was a dead end, but Jiwon thanked her anyway. He returned to the human quarter, where Dr. Sorahan lived in quarters adjacent to where Hana had lived. The scientist was in her 30s, with tired eyes and worry lines that hadn't been there 3 weeks ago. I don't know what to tell you, Sora said, letting them into her quarters. Yuna ran to a corner where her belongings were piled, finding a stuffed animal and hugging it close. Hana asked me to watch Yuna for a few days. She said she had a big project, something sensitive. Then I got a message saying she'd resigned and left the station. I tried calling her. No response. I went to station administration. They said it was her choice and there was nothing they could do. What was she working on? Jiwon asked. This sensitive project? She never said exactly. But she'd been interviewing other species, recording their perspectives on human culture. She was excited about it. She said humans were fascinating to other species because we're so emotional. Nari was examining Hana's quarters through the open door between the 2 living spaces. Her clothes are still here. Her photos, everything. I know, Sora said softly. That's why I didn't believe she left by choice. But what can I do? I'm a botanist, not an investigator. And the station says everything was legal. Jiwon walked into Hana's quarters. It was small but decorated with care. Photos of Yuna covered one wall, showing the girl growing from a baby to her current age. Books in Korean lined a shelf. A half-finished cup of tea sat on the desk. The liquid long since evaporated. He opened the desk drawers carefully. Personal items, work notes, and a small data pad. He picked up the pad and activated it. The screen showed Hana's personal logs, diary entries written in Korean. The last entry was dated 3 weeks ago. Ji-won read it, his jaw tightening with each sentence. Met with Krelven today. He wanted to know more about human family structures, asked strange questions about contracts and obligations. Something felt wrong about the conversation, but I can't place why. He kept asking about debt and how humans handle financial obligations. Note to self, talk to Ambassador Minho about this. The entry ended abruptly, mid-thought. As if she'd been interrupted. She was going to talk to the ambassador, Ji-won said, showing Nari the pad. But she never got the chance, so what do we do? Nari asked. Ji-won looked at Yuna, who was watching him with desperate hope in her eyes. He thought about the official records, the resignation letter that didn't sound right, the departure that happened too quickly. He thought about the Vrin representative who had filed the resignation for Hana. We do what humans do, he said. We don't stop looking. Not until we find the truth. Nari nodded slowly. This could get us in trouble. Velkram said the case is closed. The case is closed for him. Not for us. Ji-won knelt down in front of Yuna. I promise you, we're going to find out what happened to your mom. Okay, the little girl nodded, tears streaming down her face. Okay, Ji-won stood, his decision made. The official investigation might be over, but the human investigation was just beginning. He pulled out his communicator and called the one person who might be able to help them navigate the politics of this situation. Ambassador Minho Lee, please, he said. Tell him it's urgent. Tell him it's about one of our people. As they waited for the call to connect, Ji-won stared at the photo of Hana on the wall. A smiling woman who loved her daughter. A woman who wouldn't just leave somewhere out there. She was waiting for someone to find her. And Ji-won Park had every intention of doing exactly that. Ambassador Minho Lee had a reputation for being calm under pressure. He had negotiated humanity's entry into the Galactic Coalition, navigated a dozen diplomatic incidents, and maintained peace with species who found humans loud, emotional, and unpredictable. But when Ji-won finished explaining the situation, the ambassador's calm facade cracked. They took one of our people, Minho said quietly. His office overlooked the docking bays, and he stared out at the ships beyond the transparent wall. And we're supposed to accept it because it's technically legal? According to coalition law, yes, Ji-won replied. Velkram says the case is closed. Hana resigned, she left. End of story. But you don't believe that? No, sir. Neither does her daughter. Minho turned from the window. He was older than Ji-won, maybe 50, with gray in his hair and the kind of face that had seen too much political nonsense. If we push this officially, we risk violating diplomatic protocols. Humanity's membership in the coalition is still new. We can't afford to make enemies. So we do nothing? Ji-won felt anger rising in his chest. We just leave her wherever she is? I didn't say that. Minho smiled, a small, tight expression. I said we can't push this officially. But you're off duty most of the time, aren't you, Corporal Park? What you do on your own time is your business. Ji-won understood. The ambassador was giving him permission without actually giving him orders. Plausible deniability. And if I find something? Then we'll discuss it carefully. Minho sat down at his desk. But Ji-won, be smart about this. These Vrin, they're not stupid. If they took Hana, they did it for a reason. Find out what that reason is? Ji-won nodded and left the office. Nari was waiting in the corridor, and together they returned to the security station to continue their investigation. Within 12 hours, word had spread through the human quarter. Humans talked. They shared information over meals, in the corridors, in the small recreational spaces where they gathered after work. By the next morning, everyone knew that Hana Choi was missing and that the official story didn't make sense. Engineers stopped by the security station with information. A maintenance worker named Taijin had seen Vrin crew members near the human quarters on the day Hana disappeared. A merchant named Yunji remembered Hina mentioning that a Vrin representative had been asking uncomfortable questions. Every human on the station who had known Hannah came forward with some small piece of information. It was Nari who started connecting the pieces. She worked through the night, cross-referencing data, following digital trails that barely existed. When Jiwon arrived for his shift the next morning, she looked exhausted but triumphant. "I found something," she said, pulling up files on her console. 6 other people resigned in the past year. All of them were specialists. A medical technician, 2 engineers, a linguist, a cultural expert, and a xenobiologist. All of them had their resignations filed by Vrin trade representatives. All of them left on Vrin ships. Jiwon leaned over her shoulder, reading the names. None of them were human. Different species, different jobs, but the pattern was clear. "That's not a coincidence." "No," Nari agreed. "It's a system. And look at this." She pulled up another file. All of these resignations mention accepting private employment opportunities, but I traced the ships they left on. They're all heading to the same place. A Vrin mining operation in the Outer Rim. Mining? Jiwon frowned. Why would they need a cultural expert or a linguist for mining? They wouldn't, not for the mining itself. Nari pulled up more information. But look at this. Vrin trade law allows something called debt servitude contracts. If someone owes the Vrin money, they can work it off. The contracts are legal under coalition law because they respect internal species legal systems. Jiwon felt cold understanding settle over him. They're creating fake debts. That's my guess. They claim these people owe them money for transportation or housing or some made-up service. Then they offer a contract. Work for us until the debt is paid off. Under coalition law, it's legitimate. How long are these contracts? Nari didn't answer immediately. When she did, her voice was barely a whisper. 40 standard years. 40 years. Hannah's daughter would be middle-aged before her mother came home. If she came home at all. G1 stood up, pacing the small security station. We need proof. We need to show that the debts are fake, that these people didn't actually agree to this. That's going to be hard, Nari said. The Vrin are careful. They have documentation for everything. False documentation, but it looks real. A new voice spoke from the doorway. Maybe we're looking at this wrong. Jiwon turned to see Daeyeon Ko, a combat engineer from the human military contingent. He was broad-shouldered and practical, the kind of person who solved problems with direct action. Behind him stood Captain Hyan Seo, a merchant who ran supply routes between stations. What do you mean? Jiwon asked. Daeyeon walked into the station, pulling up a chair. We're trying to prove the contracts are illegal. But what if we just buy Hannah's contract? If it's a debt, we pay it off. She comes home. You think they'll just let her go if we pay? Nari sounded skeptical. It's worth trying, Hyan said. He was thin and nervous-looking, but his eyes were sharp. I've dealt with Vrin traders before. They respect money. If we offer them enough, they might take the deal. How much would we need? Jiwon asked. Hyun pulled out his data pad, running calculations. For a standard contract? Probably 200,000 coalition credits. The room fell silent. That was more money than most humans on the station earned in years. We'll raise it, said a voice from the doorway. Dr. Sora Han stood there, Yuna holding her hand. The little girl looked tired, dark circles under her eyes. Behind them were more humans. A dozen of them, then more, crowding into the corridor outside the security station. We'll all contribute, Sora continued. Every human on this station. We'll raise the money. That's a lot of credits, Nari said. Then we'll work for it. An engineer named Minjin stepped forward. I can sell custom ship modifications. There are traders who will pay good money for human engineering. I'll donate my wages for the next 6 months, said another voice. I have savings, someone else added. I can sell my artwork, Yuna said in her small voice. Everyone looked at her. The little girl who had hacked the station's security systems raised her chin. I draw pictures. People like them. I can sell them and help bring my mom home. Jiwon felt something tight in his chest. He looked around at the faces of his fellow humans, seeing determination in every one of them. This was what other species didn't understand about humanity. They saw humans as individuals, but humans saw themselves as a community. When one of them was in trouble, they all responded. "All right," he said. "Let's do this. Let's bring Hana home." Over the next 3 days, the human quarter transformed into something between a marketplace and a war camp. Engineers set up shop offering their services. Merchants donated portions of their profits. Even the children contributed, selling handmade crafts and drawings. Yuna's artwork, simple pictures of stars and ships, sold for far more than they were worth because everyone knew why she was selling them. Other species watched with confusion and curiosity. A Centauri trader asked Jiwan why humans would give their money for someone most of them had never met. "Because she's one of us," Jiwan said simply. "Because she has a daughter who misses her. Because it's the right thing to do." The Centauri didn't understand, but that was okay. Humans weren't doing this to be understood. They were doing it because it was who they were. 72 hours after they started, they had the money. 200,000 coalition credits. Raised by a community of barely 300 humans. G1 stood in the ambassador's office, looking at the credit chip that represented weeks of work and sacrifice. "When do we leave?" Minho asked. "Tomorrow," Jawan said. "We'll take Captain Hyan's ship. We'll go to the Vrin mining operation, buy out Hana's contract, and bring her home. And if they refuse?" Jiwan thought about Yuna, about her desperate hack that had started all of this, about a community that had come together for one person. "Then we'll find another way. Humans don't give up on their people, Ambassador. You know that?" Minho nodded slowly. "Good luck, Corporal. Bring our people home." Captain Hyan's ship, the Morning Star, was small but fast. It had carried cargo across Coalition space for 5 years without incident, which in merchant terms meant it was reliable. Jiwan sat in the passenger section with Nari and Dayan, watching stars stream past the viewport as they traveled through hyperspace. The Vrin mining operation was 3 days away from Harmony 7. Located in a system that didn't have an official name, just a catalog number. It was the kind of place people went when they wanted to be far from Coalition oversight. The perfect location for something that was technically legal but morally wrong. "What's our approach?" Dayan asked. He was cleaning a small sidearm, checking the power cell with practiced efficiency. "Do we go in polite or do we go in ready for trouble?" "We go in polite," Jawan said firmly. "This is a business transaction. We have the money, they have something we want. Simple trade." "Nothing simple with the Vrin," Hyan called from the cockpit. "They're traders first, second, and third. Everything is negotiation to them. Everything has a price, and that price changes depending on who's asking." Giwan knew this, but he wanted to believe it would work. They had the credits. They had made their offer legitimate. There was no reason for the Vrin to refuse. The mining station appeared on their sensors after 3 days of travel. It was bigger than Jiwan expected, a sprawling collection of modules and platforms built around several large asteroids. Ships came and went, carrying ore and supplies. The station had no name, just a designation. "Vrin Extraction Facility 17. They're hailing us," Hyan said. "Standard security check? They want to know our business." "Tell them we're here to negotiate a contract purchase," Jawan said. There was a pause, then Hyan nodded. "They're giving us permission to dock. Bay 7. The docking process was smooth. Too smooth. Jiwan felt uneasy as they locked into place and the airlock cycled. This was supposed to be a mining operation in the middle of nowhere, but it ran with the efficiency of a major commercial station. A Vrin was waiting for them at the airlock. He was tall and thin, with blue-gray skin and 4 arms. His eyes were large and dark, positioned on the sides of his head in a way that let him see in almost all directions at once. He wore formal business attire, which on a Vrin meant elaborate cloth wrappings in multiple colors. "Welcome to Facility 17, he said through a translator device. His actual voice was a series of clicks and whistles. "I am Krelvan, administrator of this operation. You wish to discuss a contract? Yes, Jiwon said, trying to sound confident. We're here about Hannah Choi. We understand she's working here under a debt servitude contract. We'd like to purchase that contract. Krelvan's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his body language. A subtle tension. Hannah Choi, yes, she is fulfilling her obligations here. Her contract is valid and legal under coalition law. We're not questioning its legality, Jiwon said carefully. We just want to buy it out. We have 200,000 coalition credits. That should be more than enough to cover any debt she might have. I see. Krelvan gestured with two of his forearms. Please come to my office. We should discuss this properly. They followed him through the station. The corridors were clean but cold, lit by harsh white lights. Through windows, Jiwon could see workers in mining equipment, processing, or in large chambers. He looked for Hannah among them, but saw no humans. Krelvan's office was large and decorated with what Jiwon assumed were status symbols from Vrin culture. Complex geometric patterns on the walls, displays of rare minerals, and a large desk made from some kind of dark metal. Please, sit. Krelvan gestured to chairs that were clearly designed for Vrin anatomy but could accommodate humans if they were careful. Jiwon sat, placing the credit chip on the desk between them. 200,000 credits. That's our offer. Krelvan looked at the chip but didn't touch it. I appreciate your directness, Corporal Park. Humans are refreshingly straightforward. But I'm afraid there's a misunderstanding. What misunderstanding? Hannah Choi's contract is not just about money. It's about principle. Krelvan leaned back in his chair. She has skills we value. Cultural expertise, linguistic abilities, and a deep understanding of multiple species' social structures. These are rare talents. We invested significant resources in bringing her here and training her for our operations. She's a cultural liaison, not a miner, Nari said from beside Jiwon. What do you need those skills for? Mining is not just about extracting ore, Krelvan replied smoothly. It's about understanding the various species we employ, managing diverse workforces, facilitating communication. Hannah has been invaluable in this regard. Jiwon didn't believe a word of it, but he kept his expression neutral. Regardless of her value, we're offering to buy out her contract. That's standard practice in debt servitude agreements, isn't it? Under normal circumstances, yes. Krelvan finally picked up the credit chip, examining it with casual disinterest. But these are not normal circumstances. You see, Corporal, humans are very new to the Coalition. You've only been members for 3 cycles. And already you're making demands, trying to interfere in legitimate business operations. We're not making demands. We're making an offer that assumes I want to sell. Krelvan set the chip back down. The problem with you humans is that you think everything is negotiable on your terms. But this is not human space. This is coalition space, and in coalition space, different rules apply. Jiwon felt the situation slipping away from him. What are you saying? I'm saying that Hannah Choi's contract is not for sale. Not to you? Not for 200,000 credits. Krelvan stood, signaling the end of the meeting. I appreciate you coming all this way, but my answer is no. Wait, Dae-yun said, speaking for the first time. You haven't even made a counteroffer. That's bad business. Krelvan paused, something like amusement crossing his face. You want a counteroffer? Very well. 500,000 credits. That's my price. The number hung in the air like a weapon. 500,000. More than twice what they had brought. More than the entire human population of Harmony 7 could raise in months. That's unreasonable, Jiwon said, trying to keep his voice steady. That's my price, Krelvan repeated. Take it or leave it. But I think we both know you can't pay it. Which means Hannah Choi stays here, fulfilling her contract for the next 40 years. As is her legal obligation, can we at least see her? Nari asked. Talk to her? That would not be appropriate. She is working. I cannot disrupt operations for a personal visit. Krelvan moved toward the door. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have actual business to attend to. Your ship will be given clearance to depart within the hour. They were being dismissed, thrown out, and there was nothing they could do about it. The walk back to the Morning Star was silent. Jiwon clutched the credit chip in his hand, feeling the weight of failure pressing down on him. They had come so far, raised so much money, and it hadn't been enough. "He's playing games," Hyan said once they were back on the ship. "The contract probably isn't even worth 50,000 credits. He just doesn't want to sell to humans." "Why?" Nari asked. "What does he gain by keeping her?" "Respect," Daeyeon said bitterly. "Or what passes for it in his culture. He's showing the coalition that humans can be pushed around, that we're too new, too weak to matter." Jiwon sat down heavily in the passenger section, staring out the viewport at the mining station. Somewhere in there, Hannah Choi was trapped, working, probably scared, definitely alone. And he had failed to bring her home. His communicator buzzed. A message from Harmony 7, from Sora, with an attached video. He opened it. Yuna's face filled the small screen. She looked even thinner than before, her eyes too large in her small face. "Did you find my mom?" she asked. "Is she coming home?" Jiwon closed his eyes. He couldn't answer that. "Not yet. We need a new plan," Nari said quietly. "There has to be another way." "What other way?" Jiwon asked. "We tried doing this legally. We tried paying. He won't accept it." "Then maybe we stop playing by coalition rules," Daeyeon suggested. "Maybe we remind this Krelvan what happens when you take something from humans." "We're not starting a war over this," Jiwon said. "I'm not talking about war. I'm talking about leverage." Daeyeon pulled out his data pad. "Every operation has vulnerabilities. Every business has secrets. We just need to find his." Jiwon looked at his team. Nari, the systems expert. Daeyeon, the practical problem solver. Hayan, who knew the darker sides of trade routes. And himself, a security officer who had already bent several rules just by coming here. Maybe Daeyeon was right. Maybe it was time to stop playing nice. "All right," Jiwon said. "Let's find out what Krelvan is hiding." Nari worked through the night, her eyes reflecting the glow of multiple screens. The Morning Star had left the mining station, but they hadn't gone far. Hyan kept them in a nearby system, hidden behind a gas giant's massive shadow, while Nari did what she did best, find things people wanted to keep hidden. "The Vryn are meticulous record keepers," she explained as Jiwon brought her coffee. "Everything is documented, everything has a file. That's their culture. But that means if they're doing something illegal, there's a record of it somewhere." "Can you find it?" Jiwon asked. "I already did." Nari pulled up a series of files on her main screen. "I've been tracing Facility 17's supply chains for the past 6 hours. They claim to be mining rare minerals from asteroids in this system. They file reports with the coalition, pay their taxes, everything looks legitimate. But their output numbers don't match the available resources in this system." Nari highlighted several documents. "They're reporting extraction of minerals that don't exist in these asteroids. At least not in the quantities they're claiming." Daeyeon leaned over her shoulder. "So where is it coming from?" "That's what I wanted to know." Nari pulled up a map of the surrounding space. "So I started tracking their shipping routes. Most of their ore goes to legitimate buyers, standard business. But about 30% of it takes a different route. Look at this." She traced a line on the map. The route led to a different system, one that was marked in red on coalition charts. "That's a protected survey zone," Jiwon said slowly. "Coalition scientific teams use those areas for research. All mining is prohibited." "Exactly," Nari's smile was grim. "Krelvan isn't just mining legal asteroids. He's stealing ore from protected coalition zones and mixing it in with his legitimate supply. He's been doing it for at least 2 years, maybe longer." The implications settled over the ship like heavy gravity. This wasn't a minor violation. This was major criminal activity that could shut down the entire Vryn operation and land Krelvan in a coalition prison. "How much evidence do you have?" Jiwon asked. "Enough to convince a coalition investigator. Shipping manifests or analysis reports, navigation logs from his ships. It's all here, buried in data that he thought was too complex for anyone to trace. Nari looked up at Jiwan. We have him. Hyan appeared from the cockpit, his expression cautious. So what's the play here? We turn this over to coalition authorities. We could, Jiwan said, but that would take time. Investigations, hearings, legal procedures. Hannah could be stuck there for months while the bureaucracy processes everything. Or, Bayan said quietly, we give Krelvin a choice. They all understood what he meant. It wasn't blackmail, Jiwan told himself. It was justice. They weren't asking for money or trying to hurt anyone. They just wanted Hannah back. Let's do it, Jiwan said. The Morning Star returned to Facility 17 12 hours after leaving. The same docking procedures, the same bay. But this time, when they walked off the ship, Jiwan carried a data chip containing all of Nari's research. Krelvin looked surprised to see them again. His 4 eyes narrowed as they entered his office without being invited. Corporal Park, he said, his translator making his voice sound annoyed. I thought I made my position clear. The contract is not for sale. We're not here to buy the contract, Jiwan said. He placed the data chip on the desk. We're here to give you a gift? A gift? Krelvin didn't touch the chip. Information. About your mining operation. Jiwan sat down without being invited. See, we got curious about where all this ore comes from. This system doesn't have enough resources to support your output numbers, so my colleague here did some research. Nari stepped forward. You're mining in protected coalition survey zones. Specifically, the Theta 7 system. You've extracted approximately 40 million credits worth of rare minerals from protected sites over the past 2 years. That's a direct violation of coalition protection laws, punishable by Operation Shutdown and criminal prosecution. Krelvin's skin changed color slightly, a pale blue shifting to darker purple. Jiwan didn't know Vrin biology well enough to interpret it, but he guessed it wasn't a good sign. That's a serious accusation, Krelvin said slowly. It's not an accusation, it's a fact. Nari pulled up a holographic display from her portable device. Here's the shipping data. Here's the ore analysis showing mineral compositions that don't exist in this system. Here's the navigation logs from your transport ships showing routes to the Theta 7 system. And here's the coalition law you're violating. It's all documented. The office was silent except for the hum of environmental systems. Krelvin stared at the evidence, his forearms perfectly still. What do you want? He asked finally. Hannah Choi, Jiwan said simply, released from her contract, free to go, today. And if I refuse? Then we take this information to coalition authorities. They'll investigate. They'll find the same things we found. Your operation gets shut down, you go to prison, and Hannah gets released anyway when the contract is invalidated. But that path takes months and creates a lot of enemies. Jiwan leaned forward. Or you release her now, voluntarily. You file paperwork saying the debt was paid. She goes home to her daughter. And this information stays private. You're blackmailing me, Krelvin said. We're offering you a choice, Dayan corrected. Do the right thing voluntarily or have it forced on you by coalition law. Your decision. Krelvin stood, pacing his office with slow, deliberate steps. His translator remained silent, but Jiwan could hear the clicking and whistling of his natural voice, a sound of someone thinking through options. Minutes passed. Jiwan waited, his heart pounding but his expression calm. This had to work, it had to. You humans, Krelvin said finally, turning to face them, you're more dangerous than you look. More clever, I underestimated you. That's a mistake a lot of species make, Jiwan said. Very well. Krelvin moved to his desk, pulling up documents on his screen. I will release Hannah Choi from her contract. The debt will be marked as satisfied. She is free to leave. Today, Jiwan emphasized, she comes with us right now. Krelvin's expression showed something that might have been respect or might have been hatred. With Vrin, it was hard to tell. Today I will have her brought to your ship within the hour. And the other 6 people, Nari added. The ones you took before Hannah, they get released too. Krelvin's skin color shifted again. That was not part of our agreement. It is now, Yuan said. All 7 contracts, marked as satisfied. Everyone goes free. That's the deal. For a moment, Jiwan thought Krelvin would refuse, that this would all fall apart right at the finish line. But then the Vryn administrator nodded slowly. All 7, agreed. Now get off my station. And if I ever see any of you again, this cooperation ends? Do you understand? Perfectly, Jiwan said, standing. We'll wait at our ship. The walk back to the Morning Star felt longer than before. Every minute was agony, waiting to see if Krelvin would honor the agreement or if this was some kind of trap. Jiwan kept his hand near his sidearm, ready for trouble. But an hour later, exactly as promised, a group of people arrived at the docking bay. 7 individuals, all looking tired and scared but alive. And at the front of the group, with dark hair and kind eyes that Jiwan recognized from photographs, was Hana Choi. She looked thinner than in her pictures, with dark circles under her eyes and the kind of weariness that came from weeks of stress. But when she saw Jiwan and his human crew, her expression transformed into desperate hope. "You came for me," she whispered. "Of course we did," Jiwan said. "You're one of ours. And your daughter is waiting for you." Hannah's eyes filled with tears. "Yuna, is she okay?" "She will be when she sees you." "Come on, let's go home." They boarded the Morning Star quickly, not trusting Krelvin to keep his word longer than necessary. The other freed people came too, grateful and confused. Hyan set course for Harmony 7 the moment the airlock sealed. As they entered hyperspace, Jiwan sat with Hana in the passenger section. She held a cup of tea with shaking hands, still processing that she was really free. "How did you find me?" she asked. "Your daughter hacked the station announcement system," Jiwan explained. "She asked everyone to bring you back, so we did." Hana laughed, a sound somewhere between joy and tears. "That sounds like Yuna. She's always been too clever for her own good. She gets it from you, I think." They traveled for 3 days. Hana slept for most of it, her body finally able to rest after weeks of stress. The other freed people gradually opened up about their experiences. Stories of false debts and forced labor that made Jiwan's blood boil. When Harmony 7 appeared on their sensors, Jiwan sent a message ahead. "Tell Yuna we're bringing her mother home." The docking bay was crowded when they arrived. It seemed like every human on the station had come to welcome Hana back. Ambassador Minho stood at the front, smiling despite diplomatic protocols that suggested he should maintain distance from this unsanctioned operation. And at the very front, holding Dr. Sora's hand, was Yuna, the little girl who had hacked the station. The child who had started everything. When Hana walked off the ship, Yuna broke free and ran. The reunion happened in front of dozens of witnesses, human and alien alike. Mother and daughter, finally together again, Jiwan watched from the ship's ramp, feeling Nari's hand on his shoulder. "We did good," she said quietly. "Yeah," Jiwan agreed. "We did."